Hey, it's time for the fourth video in our OpSec series. And before we go into the step 4 and OpSec, I want to talk about security in general and the risk assessment process. All right. And because they kind of go together, they follow the same track, but they're slightly different. Right. And I just want to clarify it. So stick around. Hey everybody, welcome back to Grumpy Acres. Okay, now what I was talking about, imagine if you will that security is a great big pie and you cut it up into slices. And each one of those slices is a different aspect of security. All right. Now the 5-step OpSec process is almost identical to the hasty and deliberate threat assessment process. The logic is the same. There's some subtle differences, and then the main difference is when you're talking about OpSec, we are talking strictly about information. All right, this is information that the bad guys can glean that they can use against us. All right, whereas physical security, you're worried about access, you're worried about environmental stuff, you're worried about all kinds of different things. So imagine that pie being cut up, and you've got physical security, you've got financial security, you've got operational security. All right. So remember, I was not clear on that in the last video, and I want to make sure that we're not confusing anybody by conflating the two. OpSec is we're strictly dealing with information that the bad guys can glean. All right. Now we're going to go, after this video series is over, we're going to start talking about threat assessment in general, and physical security, and all the different aspects of security that are important on the homestead or in your suburban household or your city apartment or wherever. It's security, and it's the same across the board. It's just different flavors and what's more important depending on the situation and the personnel. All right. So let's talk about the 4th step in the OpSec process, which is assessing risk. So if you remember, in step 2, we identified the threats. So these are the bad guys that may be looking to gain an advantage over us. In step 3, we identified our vulnerabilities. All right, and our vulnerabilities are what information can they access? Can the bad guys access through different methods? All right. Remember, in step 3, we started thinking like a bad guy, and we started looking at different ways that they could gain information about us. All right. So now the risk, that's the risk is the threat plus the vulnerability. That's the risk. Once the risk has been identified, we need to classify them. And the way we do that is we determine or quantify 2 important aspects of each risk. All right. The first aspect is the probability of a hazard or a risk becoming an event. We need to decide how likely they are to occur. And in order to do this, we got to ask ourselves the following question. After we ask ourselves this question, the first classification is frequent. Now, an event is frequent if it's known to happen on a constant or regular basis, or is inevitable because of exposure. Now, because of exposure, what that means, that's a terminology that they use in the military. And it means that we take an action and we expose a threat surface that the bad guys can exploit. All right. And that would be a frequent event would be, I leave my house every morning and go feed the animals. And I do it before I go to work. I do it between 6 and 6:30 every morning. That's a frequent event because it's inevitable that as long as there are animals out there, I'm going to go out there and do it. Somebody's going to see me go feed the animals. All right. The second classification is likely. Okay, this is an event that is reasonably expected to happen on a regular basis or numerous times because of exposure. Now, the difference, so feeding the animals is a frequent thing that happens every day. A likely event would be, I got to go to work. I got to go to work, but I get weekends off and holidays. And so it's you can reasonably expect that most weekdays I'm going to go to work, but not always. I just came off of a 5-day weekend. So I was home for 3 business days. All right. So that's a likely event. The third classification is occasional or occasionally. Okay. This event is expected to happen at irregular intervals or sporadically because of exposure. It is neither common nor uncommon. Now let's see if we can think of a occasional event. Got to go to the store. We have to go to the store. So occasionally we're going to leave the property and we're going to go to the store. All right. It's neither common nor uncommon. I spent 2 months this last winter where the only places I went were the Homestead, my work, and either the automotive parts store or the feed store. So it was an occasional event that I left the Homestead. All right. The fourth classification is seldom. Okay, this is an event that happens only on rare occasions or infrequently due to exposure. What would be a good example? We get deliveries from UPS. That's a seldom thing. All right. Actually, since we moved here, it's actually been a likely event more than a seldom event. But once we get settled in, we're not going to be spending nearly as much money having stuff delivered. Okay. So we'll classify that as a seldom event. All right. Because let's just pretend that we're actually saving our money right now. Right. And the fifth and final classification is unlikely. Okay. And this is an event that's not likely to occur or extremely improbable due to exposure. Gosh, what's a very unlikely event? It's very unlikely that I'm going to go to the car dealership and come home with a new car. So bad guys that are looking for a new car to steal, it's unlikely they're going to find one here. All right. So those are the 5 classifications that we use to quantify the probability of a risk turning into. The second aspect of a risk is the severity. There are 4 classifications of severity that we use to quantify a risk. All right. And it goes from worst to least. Again, the first classification is catastrophic, and some samples of and basically what we're looking for is the consequences of if an event takes place. All right. So a catastrophic event would be complete mission failure or loss of the ability to accomplish a mission, death or permanent or total disability, loss of major critical systems and equipment, severe environmental damage, unexpected collateral damage. Okay, so as an example, say thieves get on the property and they steal the skid loader because they knew it was here. They saw me using it because they were scoping out the property and they knew where it was and they were get it. That would be a catastrophic event for us because that has become such a critical piece of equipment. All right. So that's the first classification. The next classification is critical. Critical severity is significant degradation of our capabilities or readiness, permanent or partial disability or hospitalization, extensive major damage to equipment or systems, significant damage to property or the environment, and significant collateral damage. They can't steal the skid loader, so they're gonna vandalize it. and they set it on fire, and it severely damaged it. Doesn't completely destroy it, but it also sets some building materials next to it that I need for building buildings on the property. All right, that would be a critical, significant collateral damage and significant or extensive damage to critical systems. All right, now I'm just using these examples. I want you to when you're done with the video, I want you to go do an assessment of your risk that you identified in steps 1 and 2, and use your own judgment on what's critical and catastrophic for you. All right. The third level is moderate. This is degraded mission capabilities or readiness, minor damage to equipment, systems, property, or the environment, lost days due to injury or illness. So a moderate event would be somebody gets in, and this is an example. Somebody goes joyriding in my hayfield and they completely tear it up. All right. That's not really that bad. It's not a game changer. Yes, it's minor damage to the field and I got to fix it, but it's not a complete loss. All right. The fourth category is negligible. Okay, some examples of this are minimal injury or damage, little or no impact to readiness, first aid or minor medical treatment is needed, little to no property or environmental damage. We live out in the country, and a good example is kids playing mailbox baseball. Yeah, that's minimal damage, You got to replace your mailbox. You know, in the big scheme of things, it's not that bad. All right, it's just a hassle. So we have classified probability and we've classified severity. Now the way we utilize this is take a look at this chart. What we do is we take on a piece of paper and we write down an event. We put if it's frequent, likely, occasional, seldom, unlikely to happen in one column. And in the next column, we put the severity, catastrophic, critical, moderate, negligible. All right, so we've got the 2 there. And then we look at this chart and you can see there's a legend right there that says extremely high, high, moderate, and low. Okay, this is the risk factor involved. And so we cross-reference the frequency we cross-reference the probability and the severity, and we get a risk level. And this chart, I developed it off of a quick reference guide that the Missouri National Guard handed out to leaders so they could do hasty and deliberate risk assessment. And it actually works pretty well. It gives you a level of risk that you're going to have for any certain event taking place. All right. So you've got the event in one column, you've got the probability in the second column, you've got the severity in the third column, and then the fourth column, you're able to take and put the level of risk in. Now, once you've filled out all your risk, you write all your risks down, and you've categorized them, and you've get the risk or the threat level, and then you can take and rearrange that list from extremely high to low. All right, low is it's not really that important. Frequent or extremely high is something that we need to look at immediately. Let's use this chart and let's quantify the risk of a couple of things as far as OpSec goes. All right, so we identified the threat in the second video of a car thieving ring, and they have stolen 5 cars in the last 30 days from this town, and I live in this town. All right, I don't really live in this town, but this is, let's for sake of argument, let's say I live in this town. All right. So the probability of my car getting stolen this month is, it's pretty likely. If I don't mitigate it, it's pretty likely that it's going to happen. All right. If I leave my car on the street with the windows open and the keys in it, it's pretty good possibility that it's going to happen. So we're going to call that likely. All right. So that's column B. Now, I've got one car. That's the only car I have, and I need it to get to work. And there's no way I can hitch a ride with anybody. And that's the only car we have, and we don't have the money to get another one. So if that event takes place, the severity is going to be very catastrophic. All right. So we cross-reference likely and catastrophic, and it gives us an EH, which is extremely high. So that risk is one that I need to mitigate immediately. So step 5 in the OpSec process is finding mitigation techniques, or applying mitigation techniques. All right. Coming up with solutions. All right. So the bad guys can see my car on the sidewalk or on the curb with the windows down and the keys in it. I'm giving them all kinds of information and opportunity. All right. So that's an extremely high risk. All right. Let's take another one. Now remember, we're only talking about information. All right. So we identified, let's use data information this time. All right. We know that if somebody gets my social security number, they can do all kinds of mischief. All right. Now, what's the probability of somebody getting my social security number? Well, I go to the doctor's office, they've got my social security number. I go to the bank, they've got my social security number. I go to the DMV, they've got my social security number. So there's all kinds of entities that have my social security number, and it's exposed. It's exposed, but for the most part, they all have pretty good data security. And, so my data has never been stolen, knock on wood. All right. So it's a seldom event. All right. Cause I don't have any mitigation things in place. And this is just, remember, this is all hypothetical. I don't have any mitigation in place. So it's a seldom thing for me. All right. Now, if somebody gets my social security number, that's a pretty critical event. I can fix it through mitigation after the fact, but I can't do, it's gonna hurt, and it's gonna take some time. It's not unsurvivable, but it's bad. So I'm gonna call that one a critical. So if we cross-reference that, critical with seldom, that gives us a moderate risk. All right. So if I don't do any mitigation techniques, I'm going to be exposed to moderate risk there. And that's it's not as high as extremely high and high, but it's important. All right. Actually, all this stuff is important. And you may feel differently about it. All right. You may feel differently about where everything is in the severity and the probability level. If you're in an industry where all your personal data is exposed constantly, then yeah, that's the severity becomes higher and the probability. Okay. Somebody can drive down my road and look at my house and look in my windows. Okay, that's an operational security problem, because they can see what's going on inside the house. They can see things inside the house. They can do all that, because you got the windows open. The probability, it's pretty likely that if somebody's looking as they're driving by, they're going to see it. Now, what's the severity of them actually seeing something? Well, if you don't have anything going on in the house that's really important, then that's negligible. Yeah, they let them see it. It's no big deal. But if you're running a business and you're counting your money in front of the open window. Yeah, that the severity of them acting on that information could be pretty critical or catastrophic, right? It could lead to some pretty bad stuff happening. So we're going to say it's negligible because we got nothing going on, right? So that's a low event. Now, when we classify these three, my car being on the curb with the windows down, the keys in it. What was this? My social security number being exposed to data breaches, and people being able to drive by and look in my window at my house. Okay, so we've got an extremely high, a moderate, and a low. Now, we classify that. Mitigation, we would work on the extremely high first, down to the moderate, and down to the low. All right, and there's risk assessment in the nutshell. Okay, I'm going to put this chart and a sheet for you to write down your risks and everything on the community page. So you can download it, print it off, laminate it if you want to. You'll have it on hand if you're gonna do anything OpSec wise, so you can go ahead and classify stuff. Now, one thing about these classifications I want you guys to understand. There's a thing that I call a pet fear. And what this is it's a fear or concern that we as individuals put very high emphasis on. All right. And it tends to cloud our view of things. Doomsday Prepper, that show on National Geo, they capitalized on pet fears. If you watch every single episode, every segment, they're capitalizing and they're focusing on people's pet fears. And it's there's nothing wrong with having a pet fear. It's when it starts interfering with everything else in your life that it becomes an issue. Like the meteor hitting the planet. If you're focused on that doomsday meteor to the exclusion of other things, then yeah, that's a problem. Right. So we need to make sure that we're putting our pet fear aside and we're looking at things in a rational and realistic manner. Not that pet fears are irrational and unrealistic. It's just the probability of a meteor hitting the planet is so low that I wouldn't even begin to think about it until I got every single other risk taken care of. But that's just me. Meteors are not my pet fear. If you want to know the truth, you know what my pet fear is? My pet fear is the infrastructure going away, the infrastructure of modern society going away. And the reason it's my pet fear, I'll just go off on a tangent here for a second. The reason it's my pet fear is because every single other risk that's out there, the inevitable outcome of these events taking place is the infrastructure either being downgraded or destroyed completely. All right. And that's why it's my pet fear. So I naturally look at everything I'm doing, the homestead, any preparations that we may do, any mitigation, all that stuff is geared towards my pet fear. If you're living next to a nuclear 3 Mile Island plant and your pet fear is a meltdown, then yeah, you're gonna all your mitigation and everything is going to be done to alleviate that pet fear. All right. So we need to make sure that we're cognizant of what our pet fear is and making sure that it does not cloud our judgment whenever we're doing these categorizations. All right. Listen, I hope I made sense through this. As I was preparing for this video, I was looking at the full risk assessment presentation that I did, and I think I'm going to do a separate video just strictly talking about hasty and deliberate risk assessment. All right, because it's the basis of everything that we do. We face risk every day, multiple times a day, and all our decisions are based on calculating that risk and deciding how to approach it. All right, so I think it's a very interesting topic to me because a lot of people, what's it, condition white, where you're completely oblivious to everything going on around you. There's so many people out there that are like that they're a threat to other people. And everybody needs to be cognizant of risks that are on around them, and they need to learn how to assess them properly and deal with them. All right. Because the risk assessment, hasty and deliberate risk assessment, deals with all the aspects of it, from identifying to mitigation, just like the OpSec deals with the informational aspect of threats and vulnerabilities. Okay. So you guys can look forward to that video. And I think I'm going to do one. I think your OODA loop is showing, and we need to address that too. That's a very interesting topic if you don't know what that is. So there's a little teaser for you guys. If you thought this video was worthwhile, go ahead and share it with somebody that might find it interesting. I'm going to put this in the OpSec playlist. So if you're new, go back and watch those other videos. Hopefully they're not okay, guys. I'm not gonna lie. I'm still working on making good videos for y'all. Getting better, but it's a slow, painful process for everybody involved. All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want to catch the last video in this series, go ahead and hit the notification bell so that you know whenever the videos drop. I'm trying to get Yoda to do more videos. She's got some canning stuff that she wants to do, and some gardening stuff that she wants to do. And I'll be getting back out into the property and doing videos out and showing you what we're doing around the property. Did some really cool things this week. That's why it's been a couple of days since we did a video, because I was literally out working till 9-10 o'clock every night. All in all, hope you enjoyed it. Most important thing is go live a life done free. RPG Claire.
Thanks, Milo.